Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Week 5 edition of SEC Talk. And I'm here with my co-host Wade Hamilton for another jam-packed week as we get into the bulk of conference play. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Week 2 of the SEC Talk revival, and we had some good action this past weekend, some exciting games that came down to the wire, and a couple key games this week, and then a couple snoozers. But we're going to cover them all for you guys, so stay tuned.
Absolutely. As always, let's get things rolling here with the SEC teams in the AP Top 25 poll as we'll get this on here. So here are the SEC teams in the AP Top 25 poll. Now, there is a lot more movement than we saw in last week's show. Not at the top, more in the middle and at the bottom. As you see, number 1, Georgia, they stayed the same. No AP poll voters really booted them out of the number 1 spot after their showing against Kent State. Number 2, Alabama, they stayed there the same as well after their drubbing of Vanderbilt at home. Kentucky moves up 1 spot after their win against Northern Illinois. Number 8, Tennessee is a big mover in the SEC, moving up after their big win against Florida Florida at home, excuse me. Number 14, Ole Miss, they continue to keep winning as they are now the number 14 team in the country. Number 17, Texas A&M, after losing to App State in Week 2, really 2 good wins back-to-back with Miami and now Arkansas, so they're moving back up to where they were. And then number 20, Arkansas is the big fallers in the SEC. They went from number 10 to number 20, so the Hogs might be in jeopardy of falling out the top 25 with a big game looming at home against Alabama this week. So those are the SEC teams in the AP Top 25 poll as we enter Week 5. All right, let's continue on now with our reminder segment here. As always, if you have any questions. And also, we're now partnered by Fanatics, so you can use our link there. Whenever we end the show, I'll be sure to put it back up on the screen here so our viewers watching it can use our link. So that's our link if you want to get all your SEC merch, whether, if you're an Alabama fan, Auburn fan, whatever fan you are in the Southeastern Conference, Fanatics definitely has the best gear for you. So that's our reminder. So let's waste no time here. Let's get into the SEC fantasy. A really good SEC fantasy that we had here for week number 4. And our SEC segment is brought to you by Buffalo Bayou Brewing Company. Be sure to check them out if you're in Houston, especially that's down there in Chet's land. So if you're, visiting our upset specialist, Chet, definitely go check out Buffalo Bayou Brewing Company if you're in H-Town. All right. As always, let's get to the rules before we get to the recap. So those are the rules that you see on the screen there. 1 quarterback, 1 running back, 1 wide receiver, and a defense. The defenses can pretty much make or break if you get in the positives or in the negatives. And our weekly rule that we have here is we cannot pick the same player in back-to-back weeks. So, man, did we have almost a record-breaking performance by Wade as he gets his first win of the 2022 season. Wow.
Yeah, this was a good showing for sure. 505 yards. Like Tyler mentioned, the defense is key. You want to make sure that you're picking the best defense as possible. Of course, that gets a little harder now that we're entering the bulk of the SEC schedule. It's a good offense on a good defense most weeks from this point going forward. So we won't see this total again this year, most likely, but crazier things have happened. So let's get into it. Will Rogers, he's a pretty surefire bet there at quarterback. After losing the first 3 weeks to Tyler, I had to pull out the guns. Not that I wasn't trying previously, but this was my first time with Will Rogers, I think, this season. He goes for 409 yards. I had some quarterbacks that were gambles that did not pay off. See Haynes King. So Rogers got it done, 409 for me. I'm very happy about this one. Marshawn Lloyd definitely gave me a smile on Saturday. Just being a Gamecock fan, home state team. This was a guy that I called this time last week to have a breakout game, and boy, did he. Went for 169 yards, and I think he did it on like 15 carries.
So, and he also had 3 touchdowns as well, so a big day for him.
So great day for Marshawn Lloyd. I think he'll have another big week this week. I couldn't take him because of the rule that you saw on the previous screen. can't have him in back-to-back weeks. If I could, I would take him again in a heartbeat. But look for him to contribute a lot for the Gamecocks. This team might look to run the ball as we get into SEC play.
Yeah,
Dane
absolutely.
Key, he didn't quite pan out for me. He's had better games this year. Got held in check, just 15 yards, but he's still a big threat for Kentucky. And I look for him to get involved this week against Ole Miss. So keep an eye on him. And then the LSU defense, they were the MVP, letting up just 88 yards. I know that 505 is not our record, but I don't think we've had a team let up less than 100 yards in this segment. And it's been a while since I've seen that in football in general. So hats off to LSU. They let up just 2 first downs. One of them was kind of a busted play. Probably like 35 of those 88 yards came on that play. So just a really lockdown effort from LSU. And I think that they can build upon that against Auburn this week.
Yeah, you definitely had 2 record holders. Will Rogers, 409 yards. I don't think we've ever seen that, too. I think we've seen like 350, but I don't think I've ever seen a quarterback for SEC fantasy go over 400. So, and then, as you mentioned, LSU's defense, we never had a defense under 100 yards as well. So you pretty much broke 2 records. You were close to break.
Just needed a receiver.
Yeah, just needed a receiver, and you would have broke that ultimate record. I'm pretty sure that we had a 600-yard receiving, yardage game. That was in the 2019 season. So I did my research.
200-point guys. So yeah, that makes sense.
So as you can probably tell, that my team did pretty good. I mean, 215 yards on any given week is pretty good, but 505 yards is tough to beat. So Jaden Daniels, my quarterback, 279 yards. He played about 3 quarters. He did go out with injury. Not anything that LSU fans should be concerned about. Now, this was a guy that I thought that was going to have a breakout game. He always has a good game against Arkansas, and he did just that, 159 yards. Jalen Hyde, I thought that he would do a little bit better, especially, we had some news before the game that Cedric Tillman was out of the game. So Jalen Hyde was pretty much the go-to receiver in this one. 58 yards, but pretty much the offense for Tennessee was Hendon Hooker and Hendon Hooker himself. He did it both through the air and then on the ground. And then Georgia defense, man, y'all let me down for like probably the first week and how many times. So 281 yards against Kent State is just unacceptable, as that really torched my score down to 215 yards. Respectable score, but you got to give credit to you for putting up 505 this week. So let's see if you can put up another 500-plus game going into week 5. We'll go to the quarterbacks, and look at that. The 2 Wills are back.
Yep, 2 of the best in the league. Will Levis, I believe, making his SEC Fantasy 2022 season debut. Yep. I haven't taken him. Have you?
No, I have not.
So, it's week 5. It's time to get this guy involved. He's put up a couple 300-yard games, and he's playing against Ole Miss this weekend on the road. I think that'll be a tough environment, but I also think it'll be a shootout where Kentucky's going to have to move the ball quick unless they can establish the run. But, I think that Levis is going to have to step up and make some big-time throws. So hopefully he can flirt with 300 yards. I don't expect 400 out of him, but your guy might get it, go back-to-back 400-yard weeks.
Yeah, I mean, Will Levis is one of the more consistent quarterbacks in SEC fantasy. He's going to put up 300 yards any given week. So that's why I pretty much had to panic and, just go with over-reliable Will Rogers. I know that Texas A&M's defense is very strong in the secondary, but I just think that Mississippi State is at home. They just going to air it out against Texas A&M. Almost went with Stetson Bennett once again since they're playing Missouri, but I just figured I'd just go with Mr. Reliable and Will Rogers since I know that Will Levis is due for a big game. So now let's go on to the running backs here. You are going to be having a new face, actually 2 new faces here, not really because they have both been in SEC fantasy before, but the first time we see these 2 in the 2022 season.
Yeah, these are guys that you expect to be amongst the SEC's best at running back. Both had some suspensions to start the year for, I believe, different reasons. Emory's was kind of a holdover from some academic issues from last season, and Rodriguez, I think it was a violation of team rules. But 2 guys that are eager to get back on the field for their teams. Emory has played the last 2 weeks, but kind of has been a handcuff to Amari Goodwin, who's been LSU starter, but Goodwin got banged up last week, and I think he's probably out this week. But even if he does play, he would be at a significantly reduced workload. So look for Emory to be the guy. And our guy, Jacob, he mentioned on College Football Coast to Coast and our other show, Sports Scramble, that the key to beating Auburn is just running the football. Penn State did it to Auburn, and I think LSU is not going to try to reinvent the wheel here, and I think Emory's going to have a good day on the ground.
Yeah, I think you're definitely going to see a lot of John Emery and Noah Kane on Saturday night. Like you said, I'm going to go with Chris Rodriguez Jr. He is coming off of a suspension. So this is a little bit of a risk. Obviously, this is going to be a first game action, but the talent, you just can't really pass up on Chris Rodriguez Jr. I think that Kabasi Smoke did a really good job just holding down the fort. Kentucky's offense was really balanced. And I think that if Chris Rodriguez can really, do what he did in the past couple of years in this Kentucky offense, I mean, this Kentucky team is going to be hard to beat. So I'm going to go with C-Rod here and just give him a welcome back and have him on my team for week 5.
Absolutely.
So let's go. Yep, let's go on to the pass catchers here, as you will feature a South Carolina Gamecock, and then the Georgia tight end is back.
Yeah, it's always crazy when we throw tight ends in here, but for the second year in a row, Georgia's been led by Brock Bowers, so I'm sure you'll highlight that here in a second. I almost went tight end as well to match you. I almost went with South Carolina's tight end, Jaheim Bell, but he's been more of a short yardage guy. I actually been running some jet sweeps with him, kind of like Georgia does with Bowers. But yeah, I had to go with South Carolina's leading receiver, Jalen Brooks. He has come in and made an immediate impact for the Gamecocks, kind of seems to be building chemistry with Spencer Rattler. And while I highlighted the South Carolina running attack, I think that, in order to keep this offense balanced, they're going to have to try to stretch the field against a lesser opponent in South Carolina State so that they can be tuned up for some of these big games coming up. So look for Brooks to get involved early. Hopefully South Carolina pulls away from South Carolina State and he doesn't have to play a full game. But in the time that he's in there, I think that he could make a few big plays.
Yeah, I was down to 2 Georgia pass catchers, either Bowers or McConkey. I just went with Bowers. I just think that Stetson Bennett looks to him on his first read. I just like the matchup of Missouri. I think that Missouri's defense is going to get absolutely exposed against a Georgia offense that, really was just sleepwalking in that last game against Kent State. I think that they'll show up better on Saturday afternoon. So I'm going to go with Brock Bowers and give him a shot on our team. So now we're going to go to the defenses here. This is the first time that we see one of the defenses with South Carolina. You're going to go with old reliable of the defense in Georgia. Hopefully that they can do better for you than they did for me last week.
Yeah, you're going to see Georgia on here a lot. We try to highlight different teams and different players, but that's the number 1 defense in the country, and they're playing Missouri. So I'll go ahead and take that matchup. There was some other interesting options. I thought about South Carolina as well. You snagged them pretty early, and I thought about Florida. They're playing Eastern Washington at home, but with the hurricane coming in, that game's just kind of a risk to happen, and I could just see some weird stuff going down. So I'm going to go with old reliable here in Georgia.
Well, you remember what happened last time you picked Florida.
I know, that also was in the back of my head.
402 yards. I'm going to go with South Carolina. I'm going to give them the spotlight. I usually don't like South Carolina's defense, but I do like them against South Carolina State. SC State is 1-1 on the season. This is an offense, that can put up points, but I think that the South Carolina defense will be able to hold strong and give me some, hopefully, 200 yards is pretty much less than that is really all I want. So that's going to be the defenses, Georgia and South Carolina, and that will be week 5 SEC Fantasy Draft. So stay tuned to next week's show to see how we did. All right, let's get now into the week 4 game recap. So let's start with the morning games here, the 11 o'clock games. So this one was really surprising to me on the scoreboard here. Like Kent State in the first half was really, actually, I think at the one point that they had a pick 6 and they went up like 12-10. I was like, what is going on with this Georgia team? But as you can see, Georgia did win this game 39-22. This was definitely the worst showing that I saw on Georgia's defense for sure. The offense really got off to a sluggish start, as you see there. The player of the game, Brock Bowers. Not only is he a pass catcher, he's also a runner as well. He had 2 carries for 77 yards and 2 touchdowns. So they used a lot of jet sweeps, like you said, coming out of the backfield. But Kent State, man, this is a pesky bunch, and they definitely proved it against this number 1 team in Georgia.
Yeah, they definitely came to play, and I don't know if Georgia was just kind of caught sleeping. I don't think they're looking ahead to the Missouri game necessarily, but it was an early kickoff, and they really didn't have much to get up for in this one. But at the end of the day, they got a 17-point win. Could be a lot worse. I agree with the polls' decision to keep them at number 1, but if Kent State can figure out some holes in this defense, you got to think some of these coordinators are licking their chops. They're looking for things that they can build on and try to take down Georgia.
Yeah, Kent State might have given the game plan for some of these SEC offensive coordinators who have Georgia later on their schedule. So, yeah, it could definitely be something to watch for the Georgia defense going forward. So, next, we will continue on with our Week 4 recap here in the Southeastern Conference. That is our first conference game that we have between Missouri and Auburn. And, man, this was a defensive battle from start to finish. Really, both offenses struggled to find any rhythm. Tank Bigsby didn't have a great of a game. Missouri's defensive line was able to really hold him. He did punch it in. Auburn on the quarterback side, they went with the true freshman quarterback. They also had to bring in their third string because the freshman quarterback got hurt. But this was a wild game, especially at the end of it. Missouri, drove all the way down the field there. It was 14-14. It was looking like Missouri was going to pull off, I would say not really an upset, but a big win on the road. Missouri kicker lined up for a 24-yard field goal, and it goes wide right, and they headed to overtime. And it got even worse to Missouri. Auburn scored a field goal, and then Missouri's running back was looking like that he was going to get a touchdown, but he fumbled the ball in the back of the end zone, and then the game was over. So heartbreaking loss for Missouri, but a much-needed win for Auburn, especially after that blowout loss at Penn State at home.
Yeah, unfortunate break there for Missouri. Just 2 horrendous plays that both could have ended the game. But, defenses look sharp. Auburn, if they're going to win some football games this year, it's going to have to be on defense. Like you said, they're down to their third or maybe, I don't know, even 4th quarterback option.
Bringing the water boy.
Yeah, I mean, so who knows what's going to happen for Auburn, but both of these teams kind of, to me, look like they're going to be at the bottom of their respective division.
Yeah, absolutely. This was a very ugly game to watch at the 11 o'clock game. So now let's move on now to the third straight 11 o'clock game here is between Bowling Green heading to Starkville. Mississippi State was able to bounce back after the loss in Baton Rouge. They got the win 45-14. As you see there, the player of the game, your guy that you had him on SEC Fantasy. I'm sure that you were watching this score very closely. 39 for 50, and that's what State does. They're going to throw it a lot, and 50 passing attempts is what Rogers does. 409 yards and 6 touchdowns. He pretty much played the whole way through. I don't think Mississippi State really benched him until the final minutes. But Mississippi State pretty much, from start to finish, they were leading this game. Bowling Green's defense just didn't have any answers. Bowling Green did score 14 points, but it was in garbage time. So definitely a nice bounce back win for Mississippi State before they host the Aggies at home. So now let's move on now to the SEC Talk Game of the Week here in week number 4, and that was the Florida Gators traveling to Knoxville. A lot of national hype was here. The SEC Game of the Week was there. College Game Day was there. Pretty much every show you can think of was there. Tennessee pulled this one out 38-33. This score to me doesn't really reflect of how this game went. At the start of the game, Florida and Tennessee was pretty much going punch for punch, but then Tennessee in the second half was able to get it out to a 10-point lead, and then the craziness happens. Anthony Richardson had a good game as well. He had over 400 yards passing. Hendon Hooker, as you see there, had 300 yards passing and then 112 yards on the ground. So, I mean, Hendon Hooker could definitely be on the list of being the SEC Player of the Year. But Tennessee's defense really surged charge here in the first half, but really had some holes in the second half. As I just mentioned, Florida got it close, and they recovered an onside kick that almost gave them a chance to really pull off the upset. But Anthony Richardson's Hail Mary fell short. But a very nice win for Tennessee, and this was a whale of a game, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Tennessee deservedly moved into the top 10 after this victory. And this team's really impressive, I think the defense. Yeah, you did. I'm riding with Kentucky, you're riding with Tennessee, but I'm also riding with Tennessee. I think they'll be good. And should be able to give, maybe Georgia a scare. We talked about Georgia looking beatable with how they played against Kent State. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if Georgia goes undefeated, but Hendon Hooker seems like the guy that might be able to pick that defense apart. Like you mentioned, he went for over 100 yards rushing and had a nice day in the air. So he can take this team very far, and for them to be able to put away the Gators, that's really good for this rivalry and for Tennessee's season going forward.
This has been a rivalry that's been dominated by Florida in the past couple of years. And like you mentioned, I think that, dual threat quarterback like Hendon Hooker could be, the winning recipe of pulling off that upset against the number one team in the land, the Georgia Bulldogs. All right, let's move on now to the next game here in the Week 4 slate in the conference. That will be the Ole Miss Rebels. The screen's kind of lagging for me a little bit, so sorry about that. But Tulsa traveled to Oxford. Ole Miss really edged this one out 35-27. You got to give it to the Golden Hurricanes in this one. Their offense was able to score at will against this defense. I think that Ole Miss's offense, there's definitely some concerns with this. Jackson Dart definitely has the talent, but he doesn't really, had that one game that really vaults him over. It's either like 200 passing yards and a touchdown. That can't really have that stat line moving forward. I think that Ole Miss, the main concern is that they're too one-dimensional, and they have a Kentucky defense that is going to swarm that run game. But got to give it to Quinshon Judkins here, the leading rusher for the Ole Miss Rebels. 27 carries, 140 yards, 2 touchdowns. And this was definitely the closest game that Ole Miss had. They blew out Georgia Tech the week before. That was just a team that fired their head coach and athletic director. But still a good win for Ole Miss, but there's definitely some concerns with this offense moving forward.
Yeah, I think Ole Miss leads the conference in rushing, and that's all fine and dandy, but I think they're going to have to figure it out through the air as well, because they're about to be running against some teams that can stop the run, and the bodies are only going to get bigger up front on the opposition. So Dart's going to have to figure it out with his arm, but he is having a good season, taking over for Matt Corral. He likes to run the ball a little bit more than Corral did. There's some designed runs there. So the offense is efficient, but I think it does need to kind of balance out a little bit. And we'll really get our first true look at this Ole Miss team against Kentucky this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of that Kentucky team, let's get into their game. And they had Northern Illinois. Like we mentioned, Northern Illinois played Vandy, and then they played Kentucky tough. Kentucky, I don't know if they were looking ahead to Ole Miss, but I'm pretty sure that they were, because Kentucky, in week 1, Miami of Ohio, they won, but, Miami of Ohio really was contesting that game. But in the SEC games, they really look like one of the best teams in the country. But Kentucky did win. That's really all that matters. I'm sure that the Big Blue Nation, all they care about is just racking up the wins. They don't really care by how much. As you see there, Will Levis, the player of the game for us, 303 yards and 4 touchdowns. But Kentucky's defense was challenged against the Northern Illinois offense that has some talent on the weapons, and the receivers were able to do their job. But Kentucky, once again gets it done, but just barely this time.
Yeah, this one was a little disappointing from Kentucky. You would think they could get the offense rolling a little bit in this one, but I do think that really this team was kind of looking ahead towards the Ole Miss game. It's a top 15 showdown. It's going to be actually it's a day game, isn't it?
Yeah, it's 11 o'clock kickoff.
Well, regardless, it's going to be a big time showdown, and it'll be the first of two games against the Mississippi schools for the Wildcats. And, just like we said about Ole Miss, we'll really get a true view of how good Kentucky is. I know they beat Florida, but, a game like this kind of makes you think just a little bit, but they can certainly solidify that top 10 ranking with the win this Saturday.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely, if they can already go 2-0 on the road for their SEC games and starting 2-0, that would be a big time step for this program. So now let's move on now to the next game in our Week 4 slate, and that is another conference game. And this was one of the best games of the weekend in Arlington between Texas A&M and Arkansas. This game was just wild. Arkansas, the offense gets off to a hot start. It's 14-0, and I'm sure A&M fans are like, "Uh-oh, here we go again." But A&M's defense was able to hold charge. A&M was able to respond down 14-0. They scored a touchdown. Chain was able to punch it into the end zone. But then this is when the crazy part happened. KJ Jefferson in Arkansas was about to go up 21-7, but nope. No, they did not, as Arkansas fumbled the ball. Texas A&M recovered. And the play did not end there. Texas A&M handed off to one of their teammates. I believe it's one of their quarterbacks, and he took it to the house. And all of a sudden, Arkansas fans saw that they're going to go up 21-7, and now it's a 14-14 ball game. So it's a completely different momentum shifter as Texas A&M was able to strike once again and, just continued to build their lead. And Arkansas had the chance at the end to possibly win it with a field goal, but the kicker doinks it off of the right upright as Arkansas loses in a heartbreak. But what, past 2 weeks for this Texas A&M team. I mean, this was a team that lost at App State in week 2 at home. And then you recover with a win at Miami, which doesn't really look that great of a win since Miami just got exposed at home against Middle Tennessee. But to get a win against the top 10 team in Arkansas, which we were both high on the season, is a really good moving forward for Jimbo and this Aggie team.
Yeah, I think both of these teams have a lot to play for going forward. One plays Alabama this week and the next plays Alabama the following week. So yeah, there's a lot to play for. Each team, I guess A&M definitely controls their own destiny. If they beat Alabama, they will be number 1 in the conference. But if Arkansas is able to pull off the upset this weekend, you got to like their chances as well, because Texas A&M is not out of the woods yet. They got some tough games coming up. So lots to play for both teams. I think both are probably top 15 teams in the country. And if A&M can figure out their quarterback woes and get this offense going, I mean, the team looks every bit as good defensively as we thought they would be in the preseason.
Yep. All right. Well, let's move on to the next game of the week 4 slate. We have 3 more games to get to before we move on, and that is LSU hosting New Mexico. Like we mentioned, LSU's defense was phenomenal in this one, holding a New Mexico offense to 0 points and 88 yards of total offense. Now, going into this game, New Mexico's offense was ranked 121st, almost dead last in the country. So this offense was not good. Their defense, though, was ranked 9th, and LSU was able to really expose that with the running game. You see there, Noah Cain had 2 touchdowns on 94 yards. Jaden Daniels didn't have a throwing touchdown. He did have a running touchdown. But, this was LSU just continuing their business as they won their 3rd straight game as they go 3-0 in their 3-game slate in Tiger Stadium.
Yeah, I mean, we touched on this during the SEC fantasy segment. The LSU defense pitching a shutout, letting up 88 yards. It was a really dominant effort. So we'll see. They had a very good effort against Mississippi State as well. And we'll see if that continues this weekend.
All right, let's get on now to the next conference game. It is between Alabama and Vanderbilt. And 2 of the analysts saw this coming. One of them did. The upset specialist picked Vanderbilt.
I don't know what Chet saw.
In this one. Not even close. Alabama absolutely exposed Vanderbilt 55-3. Bryce Young had 4 touchdowns, 385 yards. The receiving game also had 2 touchdowns as well. So, I mean, this Alabama team after the Texas loss has definitely played like the team that I'm sure a lot of us expected to. I think that was honestly a good thing for this Alabama team as a wake-up call. So now that their offense is back to where I thought that they would be in their defense. I know it's Vanderbilt. It's been like Vanderbilt and Louisiana Monroe. We'll find out how good their defense is this weekend when they travel to Fayetteville. But a really good win against a team that they're just handling their business against.
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of effort we expect to see out of Alabama. So not much on this one for me, but yeah, I think Alabama, they're fortunate to be undefeated, but here they are, number 2 in the country. Wouldn't be surprising to see them contend for a championship.
All right, let's finish out the Week 4 slate with the Battle of the Carolinas. That's going to finish out here. It's the Charlotte 49ers heading to Columbia, South Carolina. And South Carolina, this game was close in this one. Charlotte kept it close for about 2 quarters. And South Carolina's offense was able to push it away, especially with Marshawn Lloyd there at the bottom with 15 carries, 169 yards, and 3 touchdowns. You called it that he was going to have a breakout game, and he did just that for the Gamecocks, and that's what they needed. After losing skid to Georgia. They won this one 56-20, so a very good win. Charlotte is going to be one of the worst teams in FBS. They do have good offense, but their defense ranks dead last in the NCAA. So South Carolina to put up 50 points, maybe, this is a boost of confidence to both their defense and their offense going forward.
Yeah, that's the kind of performance they needed after a rough start, losing their first 2 conference games. So a good effort here by the Gamecocks. Spencer Rattler didn't have to do much, but, the ground attack with Marshawn Lloyd was pretty impressive.
Absolutely. So that's going to be our Week 4 slate. So before we close the book here on the Week 4, we have one more thing to get to, and that's the Week 4 Pick'em results. And what a good week for you in general. You won SEC Fantasy, and then you win Pick'em, 12-2 record.
I'm picking them good this year.
Yeah, the one game that really threw it off, you did pick Oregon. I picked Washington State. Washington State and Oregon game was a whale of a game. Oregon did win that one.
It was almost a Washington State victory.
Yeah, it was almost one. But I'll take the 11-3. And obviously, Chet's bogus pick of Vanderbilt took him down to last place in 10-4. So far, so good of our pick'em results, and we'll try and do the same here in week number 5 as we get into the bulk of conference play. You'll see less FCS versus SEC. We have 2 on here. But this week 5 games and pick'em is presented by Norse Beards. You can head on over to www.norsebeards.com and use promo code OCS for 25% off your Beardsman products. All right. We have a Thursday game to kick it off here as due to Hurricane Ian, South Carolina and the South Carolina State game has been moved to Thursday night. Just the preparations for Hurricane Ian. I believe that the hurricane, now it's going to be like a tropical storm once it hits South Carolina. It'll be like Saturdays, so that's why that they went ahead and moved it to Thursdays. So I'm sure that South Carolina fans will be tuning into this one. So you got in this battle between the South Kakalakis.
Well, now that you just informed me of this scheduling change, maybe I'll go to South Carolina a little early this week and go watch the Gamecocks. But
all right.
No, I wish. Oh. But yes, I am crazy. I am currently scheduled to fly into the hurricane, but that's just what you do when you got engagement showers and whatnot. So, back to the game. I think that South Carolina dominates this one. Should be a good halftime performance. So that'll be the highlight of the game. Other than that, the Gamecocks should take the cake in this one.
Yes, I think that they are going to weather the storm.
The sandstorm.
And weather the sandstorm. This is going to be one of our few easy picks that we have going forward. The pick'ems are just going to be a lot harder. But in this one, we have South Carolina taking in the Battle of the Palmetto State. All right, let's go on now to the game of the week here on SEC Talk, and that features your Kentucky Wildcats. I'm just going to call them your Kentucky Wildcats because you're so high on them. So we have Kentucky heading to Oxford. I think it's been a long time that I've seen Kentucky travel up to Oxford, Mississippi. So this is going to be a heck of a game to watch. I hate that it's at 11 o'clock, but it is what it is. Still should be a fun atmosphere up there in Vaught-Hemingway Stadium. So you're going to go with the Rebels at home or stick with the Kentucky train?
I'm going to go with the Kentucky train. I'm just curious why this game ended up being an 11 o'clock game. I know that the Alabama game and the Arkansas versus Arkansas game is going to be the highlight of the
I
week.
mean, they could
But
have switched the LSU Auburn game too. I mean, put
yeah,
LSU Auburn at 11.
that's what I would have done. And we saw that again happen next week when LSU plays Tennessee at 11. So I don't know. Maybe they're just trying to get the viewership up in that time slot. It's okay when it's, Georgia or South Carolina or Florida because they're East Coast and it truly is a noon game. But for these SEC West teams, it is a morning kickoff. So I think that shouldn't have much of an effect on the game, but I know the Ole Miss fans would be a little rowdier if it was at night. But regardless, I think it'll be kind of a shootout, and I think Kentucky will win a close one. But I think both teams get in the 30s in this one. I'll go 38-35.
Yeah, I think that these are two very balanced, well-oiled machines, both on the defense. I think that not a lot of really people in the SEC doesn't really give credit to both Kentucky's and Ole Miss's defense. A lot of people don't really think that Ole Miss, has one of the best defenses in the SEC. The offenses, Kentucky, I would say, are more balanced, especially you have Chris Rodriguez, and then you can just go to if C-Rod isn't working, you got Cavassier Smoke. He has experience in big time games. Will Levis, he's been one of the more consistent quarterbacks in SEC. And then Ole Miss, we talked about it. Right now that they're one dimensional, we'll see if it changes. I think that Kentucky secondary will give them problems, and that's why I'm going to go with Big Blue Nation. I think that
you're joining me.
I think that Kentucky gets it done. I've been going back and forth on this one for a couple of weeks. This is a game that I've been circling in the preseason. I think Kentucky gets it done. I'll say 28-24. Should be a good game to watch at 11 o'clock as you drink your morning coffee, but should be a good game. I'm going to go with the Cats, and Chet's going to go with Ole Miss in this one.
He's been a homer for Ole Miss this year.
Yeah, so this could be a game that we look back at that either Chet picks up a game or we pick up a game picking Kentucky. So we will find out. So now we go on to another big game here in the SEC. There's a lot of big games in the SEC. This is a top 20 matchup. Arkansas is doing their red out. Now, I know what you're saying. Well, both of these teams are red
teams.
Well, I guess you just had to suck it up.
Dark red and light red.
Number 2, Alabama at number 20, Arkansas. Like Wade mentioned, this is the 2:30 CBS game, but we'll see if Chet goes against Alabama like he's been doing pretty much every week. So, but are you going to do that as well?
No, I'm going to stick with the number 2 team in the country here, Alabama. Had Arkansas, held on against A&M. I might have been tempted to take the upset, but I didn't really hold that against them. I mean, it was a close game. It was not a fluke, but, just kind of a happenstance loss with the way that field goal ended up. So I didn't take that into consideration a ton, but more so that Alabama's kind of rounding into their true form. And I think this game will be close early on, but Alabama will pull away, kind of like the Texas game.
Yeah, I'm usually hinted on going with Arkansas here, but just going, the defense has really concerned me, especially in that last game. I just think that Arkansas, A&M, like that we saw, Devin A. Chain, I don't know I lost how many track that I saw him bust a big play on the rush. So Jahmyr Gibbs should be a big part in the Alabama offense for me. So I just think that after that Texas game, we're seeing a different Alabama team. They have awoken, so I think that Alabama gets it done and at least wins this one by 2 touchdowns. I'm going to go with the Crimson Tide on the road. And Chet is once again
going
to go with the Hogs as well. So look at that, back-to-back games where we have a discrepancy here as the upset specialist has already picked 2 upsets. I guess Ole Miss in the rankings would be an upset, and then Arkansas over Alabama would be a major shakeup in the SEC. We'll see if it happens on Saturday afternoon. We'll definitely be tuning into this one as we have another conference game is between number 17 Texas A&M at Mississippi State. This is a big one. Texas A&M coming off of that emotional victory in Arlington against Arkansas and Mississippi State, bouncing back with a win against Bowling Green. So you have in the battle of the maroon.
Yeah, we had the battle of red in the last game, and now the battle of maroon. And they're both Adidas schools, and Adidas has the same template for both schools. So I guess they kind of changed there when when A&M joined the conference, they almost looked identical. So, this one I went back and forth on. I really like Mississippi State's offense. I think that just on offense alone, they should be able to beat Texas A&M. But, we are seeing a little bit of life in that A&M offense with Max Johnson taking over. And Johnson, he had some success against Mississippi State while at LSU, but he did just lose his top receiver, Anaya Smith. So I think that kind of sets this offense back a week. And therefore, I'm going to go with the consistent offense here in Mississippi State. I think defensively, both of these teams are pretty stout, but I think it's hard to game plan against that air raid.
Yeah. I think that, like I said, I keep bringing up the concerns. Mississippi State's defense, we saw in week 3 against LSU on the road. The first half, their defense looked phenomenal. The second half, LSU was able to find some open holes in the running game. I think that Texas A&M is going to lean heavily on A-Chain, especially since you said Nye Smith is no longer going to be with the team as he's out for the season with injury. So that's definitely a main concern for me for Mississippi State's defense. I just think that Mississippi State's offense will be able to score against Texas A&M. It's just a matter of can A&M, keep up the pace with Mississippi State in this air raid attack. And since it's at home with the cowbells ringing, I'm going to go with Mississippi State at home. This is a game of the preseason. I had State winning as well, so I don't really see anything different. Yeah, I'm going to go with Mississippi State at home. And Chet's going to go with, this isn't good.
Well, congrats, Aggies.
This isn't good. But we're all going Mississippi State as Chet completes his 2-0 sweep of picking both the Mississippi schools. So we move on now to the game on the Plains here, and that is between LSU at Auburn. Now, this is, a rivalry that's been dominated by Auburn the past 2 years. Auburn won 41-11 the last time this game was in Jordan-Hare, and then Auburn won in Death Valley 23-21 last year. Obviously, these are two different teams. Auburn, a new quarterback, LSU, a new quarterback as well. So who you have in the Tiger Bowl this year?
It's always tough to go play at Auburn, but to me, this Auburn team's just really down right now. Probably should have lost last weekend, and LSU's defense is really looking good. So I think the Tigers get some revenge. Last year's game was a real good one. Bo Nix was the hero for Auburn. I think Auburn would love to have Bo Nix leading their team right now. They've had a lot of inconsistency at quarterback. So LSU looks sharp with Jaden Daniels, and on defense, they look good as ever. So I'm going to roll with the Tigers.
Yeah, Bo Nix is on a 3-game streak where he's thrown 5 passing touchdowns, so I'm sure Auburn would love to have him back. But going back to this game, LSU's defense the past, 3 weeks, especially after the Florida State game, it's been LSU defense that look revamped. They definitely are going to be ready for this one. I definitely think that if they can stop Tank Bigsby, then I think that LSU secondary, we've shown that they are good in man coverage as well. I think that LSU, if we already hinted at it, if LSU can get the running game going, not really put it all on Jaden Daniels, but if you can have a good game of, a balanced attack of John Emery and Noah Kane, I'm not expecting that Armani Goodwin is going to be good to go. But I think that the receivers for LSU are going to be able to, really pound an Auburn secondary that, has some holes in it. So I'm going to go with the Tigers, the LSU Tigers.
You got to specify, Tyler.
Yeah, I got to specify this week. But I'm going to go with the purple and gold Tigers this week. And Chet is also going to complete the clean sweep. I'm going with the LSU Tigers in the Tiger Bowl this week. So next, let's go on now here. We have a few games here as we're in the conference slate. So we've got 2 more games to go as we have number 1, Georgia traveling to Como. Missouri is trying to bounce back after that heartbreaking loss on the Plains. And then Georgia coming off of a man game against Kent State. So I think that this Georgia team is going to be motivated. And Missouri is definitely, trying to, pick up a win or two. And, you have Georgia coming off, one of their worst games of the season. So I think that this could be a recipe for disaster for Missouri.
Yeah, you summed it up. I mean, it's just like after Alabama almost lost to Texas, like you don't want to play a good team the week after they underperformed because, Kirby Smart let him hear it. And, the players probably felt a little embarrassed. And I think they'll come out sharp on the road against Missouri. Had Georgia taken care of business last week, this game could be a bit of a trap game, but regardless, I just don't think the talent's there for Missouri to pull off the upset.
Yeah, I don't see a trap game as well. I think that Georgia is going to be an awakened beast now after that game. I'm going to go Georgia big in this one. And Chet is also going to go with Georgia as well. No crazy upsets for him this week. I mean, the Arkansas and Ole Miss pick, are definitely more
Those were fair
reasonable
picks.
than Vanderbilt last week against Alabama. So let's close out here as we have a Sunday game in Gainesville due to Hurricane Ian. So this is another game that is moved in the SEC. This is an 11 o'clock game on Sunday. So before you watch your NFL slate, you can watch the Florida Gators take on the Eastern Washington. I guess the Eagles that they're called. So you're going to have the Gators winning in this one. This is definitely going to be a rough spot for them. I know that a lot of, the Florida players have families in the Tampa area, I'm sure. So it's going to be a tough game for them, but they have Eastern Washington at home trying to bounce back after the road loss to Tennessee.
I mean, I think they should have just let the Gators have a trip up to the Pacific Northwest, like get out of Dodge. So now they're going to have to sit around through a hurricane and then come back and play on Sunday. I don't know, but I think they'll come out fine just off talent alone. But good scheduling time for Florida here. I mean, had this been a more significant game, I think that you would really have to consider the weather and in your decision making. So, but with the talent mismatch, I think that Florida gets this done.
Yeah, I think that Florida is definitely going to be rough times for them, but I think that they get the job done. I wouldn't be surprised if it's like a 38-7 type of game, just because of the circumstances that's going on. You just got to think, these are still 20, 18, 19-year-olds. They do have families that live in the state that will be affected by this. So I expect Florida to get this one done. Eastern Washington got blown out by Oregon. This was a defense that gave up 77 points to the Ducks. So this is not a good defense. I expect that Anthony Richardson won't even play more than half, and then they'll just roll the backups and move forward. So Chet's also going to go with the Gators as well, getting their Sunday afternoon win in Gainesville and hoping boosting some confidence before they hop back into SEC play. All right, that's going to be the week 5 slate here in the SEC. So now let's move on to some of the top games in the SEC, which is presented by Righteous Felon. You can head on over to righteousfelon.com and use promo code OCSN for 15% off the best beef jerky around. All right, let's get into some top games in the SEC. We have 4 good games here. The Fox Big Noon Kickoff, the first game between number 4 Michigan at Iowa. I know that Jacob did put Michigan on upset alert. So are you going to go with the Hawkeyes and roll with Jacob, or are you going to go with the Wolverines here?
Well, he did make me sit there and think about it just a little bit, but I'm going to go with Michigan in this one. I have Michigan in the college football playoff at the moment. And
you got to keep them in, keep winning then.
Yeah, they got to keep winning. And as you see, they moved up to number 4 in the poll. So, it looks like the media agrees with me. So, yeah, Iowa, the defense is really good. The game atmosphere, of course, is really good. But the offense just isn't. So if Iowa could consistently score more than 25 points, I would give them maybe a nod at an upset, but I think Michigan will just outpace them.
Yeah, they haven't been able to do that this season. And Michigan really got their first big test last week at home in the Big House against Maryland. That was their first Big Ten opponent. And, Michigan really struggled in that one. Maryland and Talia Tagovailoa really gave them a good game, but Michigan's defense was able to make a couple of key stops. So I think that this is going to be one of the best defenses that this Michigan offense. He's rolling out there with J.J. McCarthy, the freshman. So definitely, this is going to be a tough road trip for him. This is going to be his first road test in the Big Ten. But I think that the Wolverines will pass this test. I expect this one to be close, but I think that Michigan wins this one by at least 10 points. Iowa's offense just isn't that good to keep up with Michigan's offense, especially their running attack over Blake Corum. Chet's also going to go with the Michigan Wolverines.
I'm surprised he didn't take the bait on that one.
Yeah, so we're all rolling with the Maize and Blue here on the road at Kinnick. So next, we have 2 Big 12 games here as number 18 Oklahoma travels to Fort Worth to face TCU. Oklahoma is going to try and bounce back after the home loss against Kansas State. That's their first loss that they suffered in the season. TCU and Sonny Dykes got his win against his former team, the SMU Mustangs, on the road. Not really on the road. It's pretty much like a 20-minute drive.
On the other side of town.
Yeah, but you're going to roll with the Sooners or going to go with TCU?
I'm going to go with Oklahoma in this one. I know that they just lost to Kansas State, and had they won, maybe this would be a tough road test for Oklahoma, first road game of the year. But I think they're alert now, and I think they'll edge out TCU. It will be close. Probably another like 38-35 type game.
Horned Frogs, baby. I put
Uh-huh.
them on upset alert. I got to stick with it.
All
I
right.
definitely think that Oklahoma is a talented bunch. Their defense really struggled against Kansas State. Adrian Martinez really had a good game. Deuce Vaughn. I think that TCU is one of those teams that are really not being talked about in the Big 12. All the hype right now is around Kansas, of course, because they're 4-0. Definitely should have the possibility of being ranked. But I think that, TCU at home, they really had a good win this past weekend against a very solid SMU team. TCU, I know that the score was 27-23, but TCU really dominated that game and they struggled at the end of it. But I'm going to go with TCU at home and pull off an upset. I think it's going to be close, like a 34-31 type of game. But I think that Oklahoma's defense has definitely been concerning at the start of the season. And Chet's going to roll with me, actually. He's going to go with the
All
Horned
right.
Frogs. So you're the lone duck
Get
over
a
there
chance to
with
get a game.
the Sooners. So, yep, this is your big chance to catch a game on us. So we move on now to the next big game here, the Big 12 slate. And this is honestly could be, the Big 12 title that we could see once again, unless, Kansas runs the table or go 12-0. But we see number 9 Oklahoma State traveling to Waco to face number 16 Baylor. This is the game that I've been circling. So who you got in this big matchup in the Big 12?
Well, Oklahoma State probably represents the Big 12's chance at making the playoffs. So this is big for the conference. Baylor has still everything to play for. In the Big 12, they just take the top 2 ranked teams. There are no divisions, and they don't have a conference loss yet. So they can still be the regular season champ easily. And this game's at home. They lost this game last year at Oklahoma State. I think they get revenge at Baylor this year.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me because I've been high on Oklahoma State, but this is also a tough road trip at McLean Stadium. I know that Baylor always packs out their stadium as well. I mean, this was a Baylor team that a couple of weeks ago lost at BYU to a really good BYU team in overtime. It was a very tough road trip. But ever since then, they got, I believe, they went on the road that last weekend against Iowa State. They really showed their offense is back, and their defense is one of the best in the nation. So their defense is going to get tested by Spencer Sanders in this offense. I mean, Oklahoma State has been scoring. I think they pretty much average 40 points a game. But since it's at home, I'm going to go with Baylor in this one. This is tough for me. I think that this could go either way. I would not be shocked if Oklahoma State wins this one. Just because it's at home, I'm going to go with the Bears. And Chet is going to go the opposite direction with Oklahoma State. So this could be a swing game for both of us once we look at the pick'em standings going forward. And let's close it out with the ACC game of the week. College Game Day will be here, and this will be also the ACC primetime game of the week on Saturday between number 10 NC State at number 5 Clemson. This is a top 10 matchup. The Tigers are just off of a road victory against Wake Forest. NC State has been cruising along, still undefeated. So this is an offense in Devin Leary that can really challenge the Tigers. So who you got in this matchup?
Well, I kind of took the Hurricane into account for this game originally, but by the time I had sent you my pick, the Hurricane tracker had updated its course a little bit. So I thought that this game was eerily similar to the Clemson versus Louisville game with Lamar Jackson and Deshaun Watson. It was the last time that a top 10 game between Clemson and their opponent took place in Death Valley up there in Clemson. And that game was played in a torrential downpour, hurricane-like conditions, I think first weekend of October. So I really thought that this game was going to come down to the running game, and I thought Will Shipley would be the guy, take the game out of DJ's hands and put it on the ground. It looks like they're going to dodge the rain now, and they're going to be able to throw the ball. Kind of plays to NC State's advantage. But I'm going to stick with Clemson. I do think that overall this team's just slightly better. But we're going to have to see DJ step it up now because I think this game has shootout potential rather than just grinding it out on the ground like I originally thought.
Yeah, this is a big game in the ACC. I think whoever wins this one will win their respective division. NC State going into this, I know that they're undefeated, but you look at the games, especially the opener against East Carolina, they barely won that one. Honestly, if East Carolina's kicker could nail it through the uprights, NC State would have lost that game. I know they beat Texas Tech. That was probably their best game of the season. I just think that this Clemson offense is finding their rhythm at the right time. They put up 51 points against Wake Forest. I know that Wake Forest defense isn't great. NC State's defense isn't great either. So I could see both teams get into the 30s just because of the offenses of talent, especially the quarterbacks with DJ Uiagalelei on one side and then Devin Leary. But I got to go with Tigers at home. I just think that they're going to get done, and I think that they win this game. And I don't really see a loss after that on the schedule. So this could be a team that could be in the playoff picture once again. And Jet's going to go with the Tigers as well. So clean sweep.
Go
back. All right. So we will move on now to the hot topics after we really looked at the week 5 slate and what good games we have here. So the hot topic number 1 is we mentioned before, Florida and South Carolina are moving their games due to Hurricane Ian. South Carolina moving their game to Thursday night, Florida moving theirs to Sunday. So we just want to send our thoughts and prayers. I definitely know me in Louisiana, we dealt with a hurricane last year with Ida. That was a monster. This one's looking like one as well. So we wanted to send our thoughts and prayers to the state of Florida and whatever states that are impacted by this. So I want to send your thoughts and prayers. And Florida and South Carolina, especially Florida, is going to be dealing with this. Their game is going to be on Sunday. So that their team, interested to see what they're going to do with them, maybe like ship them off somewhere. I know that the Buccaneers got shipped off to the Dolphins, and they are potentially looking at the Superdome. I think I read an article about that. So that would be interesting.
That might not be a home game for them.
Yeah, they just played there, so they would definitely be used to it. And they play the Chiefs this week, so that would be a big game as well. So the next hot topic, as we mentioned whenever we were talking about the Aggies, was Texas A&M loses their top wide receiver, Anaya Smith, to the season-ending injury. So this is definitely going to impact their offense going forward. I expect them to rely heavily on Devin Achane. I definitely not disregarding. I think that the receivers are great, but Anaya Smith was you have Smith and you have Achane, 2 of the most fastest players in the SEC that you have on one team. So that's definitely going to hurt the Aggie offense moving forward, especially this week against a very high-powered state offense that can score at any moment. And then moving on to the Tennessee Volunteers, this is their best ranking since the 2006 season. And then also, this is their first top 10 ranking since the 2016 season. That was the team that Alvin Kamara, Joshua Dobbs was on. So this is a Tennessee program that's in the right direction with Josh Heupel. They are on the bye week this week. And then, like we mentioned, they had to travel to Baton Rouge next week in a morning kickoff. So if they win that game, the ceiling is just elevated for this Tennessee team in 2022. And then the next hot topic, the last hot topic here, is that Georgia is hoping to get 2 of their wide receivers back in O'Donnell Mitchell and Arian Smith. Hopefully they can get it going on Saturday. And, if they can just add more pieces to the offense, then watch out SEC East, because Georgia is going to be for real. And I cannot wait for that Georgia-Tennessee matchup. That's going to be probably one of the greater games in SEC this season. All right, so that's all the hot topics. We'll move on to the answering questions segment. I don't see any comments. That's all right. Definitely, that's not really an obligation to all our viewers to comment. It's just pretty much if you want to. So we'll move on as we will now conclude SEC Talk week number 5. So thank you all for tuning in to this week's show. Also, if you want to tune into our other show, Sports Scramble, if you want to follow them on Twitter, you can find them at Sports Scramble 4. And wherever you listen to your podcast, Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're, Spotify, wherever it is, it's on that platform. So next week, we will review week 5 in the SEC. This is pretty much the first week that we see a full-on slate of conference games. So this is a big week going forward. And then next week, we'll look forward to week 6, as week 6 marks the halfway point, which is very crazy, but always the fall always flies by. So hope you all have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you back here next Tuesday at 8 o'clock here on SEC Talk. Have a good night.